Created in 2005 and hosted by security industry veterans, Paul Security Weekly is your source for in-depth coverage of the latest vulnerabilities, exploits, and security research. Our weekly security news discussion dives deep into the security issues we face today and potential solutions in a fun and lively atmosphere. Each week, we bring on guests from the security community to learn about their journey and discuss topics relevant to their work and research. You can also subscribe to our show by visiting securityweekly.com/subscribe or look for Paul Security Weekly in your favorite podcast catcher. We've recorded a ton of content over the years, so we created Spotify playlists featuring some of our favorite episodes, including interviews with Marcus Random, John McAfee, and Chris Roberts, to name a few. You can find them at securityweekly.com/starter packs.
Welcome back to Enterprise Security Weekly. Follow us on Twitter for live stream reminders, highlighted clips, memes, and more. You can find us at SEC Weekly, SEC Weekly. Now for the Enterprise Security Weekly news. You can check out securityweekly.com/ESW326 if you want to follow along with the different news items as we go through them. And sadly, we do not have Tyler Shields joining us today. I think he had a bad headache. But Katie, Sean, any in here, instead of just going through it normally, any in here that really have you excited that you really want to talk about? Should we talk about
sharks?
CISOs in jail?
We can't go to the
cocaine sharks, but we'll get to that
first, Sean.
I know. I just get excited about the cocaine sharks. First there was cocaine bear, now cocaine sharks. So this will tease people to stick around till the end of the news segment, because then they'll get to hear about the cocaine sharks.
That is the whole purpose of the scroll story. You've given away the secret.
I'm sorry. I'm not good at keeping secrets like that are open secrets.
Yeah, so Katie, you wrote about this a little bit. Number 11, we've got Russia sends a cybersecurity CEO. I think in the intro I said CISO, so I misinterpreted this a little bit. But CEO of a cybersecurity company that moved out of Russia to Singapore, I believe. But I guess he went back home and they arrested him and he's been sentenced to jail for 14 years. So not exactly what you were writing about in your latest Reformed Analyst, but still not a great precedent.
Yeah, I'm guessing that the circumstances were entirely different than the companies that we've seen here. The chief
Russia's kind of Russia.
Right. So, Russia, totally different situation. And because we work in a field that has no borders to a very large degree, you've got to think about the implications and what it means for you and your life and your family and all kinds of things. But if you're just talking about, here in the US, what does it mean to be the head of security now? Where have we come from and where are we going? Like, a lot of people are worried that if they want to take on that role, if they want to take on that challenge, they're basically putting their head on the chopping block. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think we have a lot of steps to go through still. I think we have a lot of nuance that we still haven't covered. And as far as being considered an equal member of the executive team, members of boards, we've had people going there for years, but I think there's still a little bit of a perception of security as being the outsiders. And some of that is just, we are the new kids on the block to a large degree, chief executive officers, chief financial officers, they've been around forever. They're accepted, they're understood. And some of it is what we do to ourselves, getting too mired in the technical details. I still hear it when I talk to people in security. There's they don't understand. Well, no, but do you really understand the really deep nuances of every other business department? Probably not as well as you think you do. So there is this conundrum, and really it's a lack of communication that's happening between the security department and the rest of the business, and you get yourself into a little bit of a sticky situation because you are the spearhead. And if something happens, to the company while you're in charge of the security department. What does that mean? What is that going to mean? So I wrote about it. I gave my opinion. I talked to two of my colleagues, friends in security, Kevin Johnson and Ben Rothke. They had almost opposing views on it, so it was really, really interesting to get their perspectives. I won't be like Sean and spoil the punchline there, but I think if you work in security, you've probably thought about, what am I doing? You know, what happens to me if I am in a position where I have to handle a breach, and maybe I know things people don't, or I find myself in a position of a breach and the rest of my executive team is totally throwing me under the bus. What do I do?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's I forget the name of the insurance, but there's a class of insurance that CISOs have to get personally, just to protect themselves personally from liability, which is I from what I gather is a fairly recent development. But
it sort of follows the whole medical community where doctors have to get medical malpractice, and you can't operate. You cannot have a license to practice medicine without it. But it's crazy expensive. Sometimes if you're part of a medical group, companies, your company will pay for it. Probably same thing for CISOs, and sometimes they won't. And then you could quite literally be out $100,000 a year.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's there's a lot of interesting stuff in this piece you wrote. Like I didn't know the story behind the very first ever CISO and the origins of the CISO role. You've got a lot of really interesting stuff in here, and it's been years since I've heard anybody mention Spaff's law. Which
Ben going back.
Yeah, those who know Spaff, I won't spoil everything, but I will read out the Spaff law, which Gene Spafford of Purdue, pretty famous cybersecurity educator. If you have responsibility for security but no authority to set rules or punish violators, your role in the organization is to take the blame. It's great. I mean, it's not great, but
it's not great. It's not great.
It's a useful. It's a useful thing to know. Yeah.
To taking it to the next level, when you're talking about CISOs and potentially or having insurance personally, I would imagine that CISOs of publicly traded companies have very stringent requirements on what they can say and can't say, because it could affect, especially now with the
stock of the sure.
Exactly. Well, the SEC is now saying that you have to disclose information about how you're protecting your environment. If the CISO has an off-the-cuff remark like, "Oh yeah, well that incident wasn't that big of a deal," that could be problematic. So I think that one of the things that we're starting to see is that there's more responsibility that comes with an executive role, such as a CISO, which is an officer role. It's similar to that we've seen with the CFO and the CEO. Maybe it's time that we're maturing what that role is, but at the same time, if we're maturing that same role to be that executive level truly, then we also need to provide some more than just responsibility, but also empowerment in the role so that they can make some changes, improve things, and not just cut off the person that would happen to be in that role when something happened.
Right.
Maybe.
Right, because you really could set your whole security department back years if you're losing that communication. If you're losing, I mean, that begs the question, why isn't there a good process to keep a contingency plan, so to speak? And sometimes there is, and sometimes there isn't. But if one person is acting as a choke point to getting that information out, or if one person is that quote unquote responsible person and nobody has any direct line to the rest of the security team, you get rid of that person, you bring in somebody else. First of all, I think Adrian mentioned this last week, you're not bringing somebody in 2 to 3 months. No way.
Right.
That's not happening. There's going to be probably best case 6 to 8 months before you find somebody. So then there's disruption in the business. There's definitely disruption in what's going on the security team. Then somebody comes in, and if they decide, hey, we're going to change this, we're going to change that, because they think that the perception is going to be, hey, if we're making all these changes, we're more secure. It's like a bomb exploded. It's way worse than a bad
there's a lot of managers that think that the way to show that they're in charge is by firing people, things up, and swapping out the folks that were old guard or the folks that were there before, and just start over and put in people that they know. And for better or worse, usually worse. You're right. There's certain things that when it comes to a company, like you probably wouldn't just get rid of the person that has been in the factory for 20 years, that knows how all the systems are configured, all the robots are configured, how everything is managed in that environment. You probably don't want to do that. Just like you probably don't want to manage this or fire the CISO that's been managing security for the past 5 years and been doing a pretty good job from the perspective of no breaches. Like it just doesn't make sense.
Well, and I mean, even whether or not how many breaches have occurred is a fair measurement, given that the CISO has no actual control over how things are configured, right? It's and Katie alluded to it. We had a great conversation about this last week with Nate Case on episode 325, just discussing what the role of the CISO should be, and if whether or not it needs to evolve, and if so, what does it evolve into?
AI. Everything's evolving into AI.
Yeah,
and with that, we'll move on
from vCISO to CISO.ai. Cool.
It'll be fine. It'll all work out.
Every time Sean says AI, if you're listening to this, you have to drink. You can drink water, though.
Absolutely.
Or maybe you should donate $1 to some CISO's insurance fund.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my goodness. All right, let's move on. So we have just a few fundings here, a few interesting ones. So Hidden Layer won the Innovation Sandbox at RSA this year. Kind of vaguely boiling the ocean, like securing AI. At the time, I didn't have a really great idea of what they were doing. Certainly there's a market for that, but it looks like they just raised a venture round. They're not calling it a Series A. I don't know why, but $32 million round. There's not really any news out on it yet. So this was Mike Prevet on his security-funded newsletter, just pointed directly to the SEC on this. So
that was
maybe
a little bit of a disappointment, Adrian. Thanks for that. Click through, read some great press release.
Yeah, no,
SEC filing.
It's the actual SEC filing. Yeah. Sorry about that. That was all there was. There maybe there's a story on it today, but there wasn't when I put this together last night. But yeah. So interesting company to watch. One of now many AI security startups that we've seen pop up.
It is interesting, the trend of not calling them a series insert letter here. It definitely says a lot about the financial market, but I'm not quite sure what that is yet.
But we still see plenty of Series A and seeds. It's the ones that are raising a down round, a round that's smaller than their previous round. I think that's where we see it get really creative.
Yeah, that's true. It's those extensions.
Yeah, extensions and venture rounds. They're just generically called venture rounds. Next one here is kind of interesting, led by Andreessen Horowitz, a $20 million Series A in Socket, which to secure open source software. So I haven't had time to read really deeply into this, but this is one of those where it's a little less obvious how they're going to monetize this. It's one of these things that looks like they're going to have to kind of run it as more of like a community thing, build a community, before they start charging for anything.
I was going to say, how are they going to do that? Are they going to focus on those distributions or those open source software things that are used in everything else that we've learned about recently? That baling wire and duct tape seems to be the underpinning of a lot of these big products, and we don't even find out what the issues are until someone uncovers a vulnerability, and it ties to a project, an open source project that one person is running part time. And are we going to start with that? Like, what is the approach? First of all, how does that show impact? And then second of all, like you said, Adrian, how do they monetize it?
Yeah, because so far what they've launched, it's all free tools, and they've launched like 8 products, but they're all they're not really products so much as they are like simple tools. Like they have a Chrome plugin. Chrome, Edge, Brave, because they're all based on Chromium, where when you're downloading an open source project, they verify, they validate whether it's secure or not, or something that's been typo squatted. So I assume there's some kind of threat intelligence on the back end there. They've got a safe-npm, a CLI tool that wraps the npm command and protects against malware or dependence, like just all the different ways that people can take advantage of npm.
Okay. So maybe less
it's just
about
all over the place. It's a whole set of free open source tools to do this. Maybe it's an SCA play eventually. Like it's something that you plug into your tool chain, your dev pipeline to check all your dependencies and stuff like that. I don't know.
Sounds like it. Sounds like less of trying to prevent the next heartbleed and more of minimizing risk around the use of open source software and making sure that you're having something that, like you said, that's coming from the right repo.
Yeah, it says Socket revolutionizes dependency security by using, quote, content-based analysis, end quote, to analyze dependency behavior and get a ground truth understanding of open source risk.
Yeah. But no detectable monetization strategy at this point.
Sounds very markety. No offense, Katie.
I didn't make that up. I just read it.
Oh, I know. I'm just saying it sounds very markety. No offense to you.
Oh God, you can't offend me. No way. I spent the first software company I worked at, I ran around for 1.5 years yelling, "I'm content, not marketing. I'm content, not marketing."
Content is marketing.
Zip it.
Anyway, so ForgePoint Capital, just announced a $15 million Series A investment. I guess they're the lead in that Series A for Converge Insurance, which is another MGA, which I pulled up the abbreviate or the acronym for that because I always forget what it stands for. It's a managing general agent. Basically, it's somebody that the insurance company listens to when it comes time to price a policy for an organization. So there's a bunch of these where technically they're, instead of a questionnaire, instead of a business filling out a questionnaire, maybe they're installing some endpoint software, some security software. Maybe they're scanning the external IP space and the domains of the company. They're doing something technically to do more than just get a little bit closer to the actual state of the company's security than just asking questions like, how secure are you? And then basing
that makes sense. Right. I mean, we've already seen it with car insurance, right? The little dongle that you plug in that monitors your driving and gets an idea of okay, are you a safe driver, or are you a little heavy on the gas pedal? So I guess this is just kind of an extension of that in a different space where it's been very difficult to really identify what the risk is in that area. You can ask questions about how many domain admins you have in Active Directory, but that's not going to give you really the full picture of what the security is in that environment. And we've worked with a lot of insurance companies and a lot of customers around insurance and security. And you can't. I should say it's very difficult to distill the security posture of an organization down to a questionnaire. There's a number of identification and indicators that you can realize or find in that environment. But it's very difficult to go, all right, if I ask these 10 questions, I will know what the risk is and the risk profile of this customer is.
Yeah, that said, I don't know what they're doing. I don't know what the technical, what that lever is. They say they're looking at some data. I'm not entirely sure. Maybe some kind of proprietary risk assessment. They pull stuff from the SIM. I don't know. But there's a bunch of others in the space. There's Corvus, Coalition, Resilience, AppBay, Alpha Secure, and they all have some different terms for it. Like some of them call it, Resilience calls it cyber primary care, a bit of a healthcare analogy there. AppBay calls it active risk monitoring. Coalition calls it active insurance. But it's the idea that you're, like some of these companies, if you open up a port to the internet, you're going to get a call on the phone. They're going to say, hey, why'd you do that? So they're actually going to micromanage. They're going to micromanage every change you make to some of these folks to your environment because of the chance that it could introduce risk. That
just
increases the chance of
breach.
breach.
Just license BAT.
License BAT, yeah.
I've got it right here.
You're good.
The breach avoidance technology right here. This will prevent the breaches.
Your risk score will go to perfect.
Your cyber bouncer is here.
Shake the bat threateningly at your sock.
With the bat, exactly.
So wait, who uses it? Is it the people in the SOC, or is it the insurance company coming in saying, you opened up your port?
Why not both?
It's the MGA, whatever they are.
Yeah.
Whatever it is.
Could lead to a bat fight.
Yeah. I was going to say, Adrian, you defined what the acronym was, and I still had no idea what it was.
Yeah, no, I mean, the basic definition is it's like a company that's entrusted with helping to define what that policy should be. So the insurance company is going to go to them and say, all right, tell us what this is going to cost based on whatever data that you gathered.
So it's like a pharmacy benefit manager for cyber insurance.
It's a special type of insurance agent or broker that has been granted underwriting authority by an insurer. They can administer programs and negotiate contracts for an insurer. Okay. So they delegate the ability to do that to the MGA or MGU, Managing General Underwriter. Yep. So HackerOne laid off 12% of its staff, but because of the kind of business it is, I can't tell how many people that is. So when you go to LinkedIn, it says they have over 4,000 employees, but I suspect a lot of those are just people who hack on the platform, right? I can't imagine they have over 4,000 employees, do they?
It sounds like a lot.
Yeah, that seems like too much. So yeah, I don't know what 12% of the staff is, but just I guess a footnote. There's still a lot of layoffs going on. We haven't quite come out of that period in the dark history, cybersecurity's dark history here. Let's see, what else? So some interesting essays here. The IT director for Gray Noise has a piece called SOC 2's Suck, A False Sense of Security. Kind of just a very honest, just sharing very honest experiences going after a SOC 2, getting a SOC 2 for Gray Noise, and the good, the bad. Everybody has crazy SOC 2 stories about silly stuff they had to do to get their SOC 2, and my favorite thing is in here he mentions if you're required to encrypt everything at rest to be to get your SOC 2, does it count if a ransomware group comes in and encrypts all your files? Does that make you SOC 2 compliant?
I guess it depends on the key management solution of that, right?
I don't know if they're that prescriptive. If they get into M of N and how you have to like PCI or something like that.
They really should. I've said for years that encryption is easy, but key management is hard, and I'm sure I paraphrased someone else with that.
Yeah, I mean, and the TLDR of the whole thing is the SOC 2 is a marketing tool, right? Like it's not really gonna help you be secure. It's a distraction that helps you sell more of whatever your company sells.
And it's also an indicator. I mean, as a cybersecurity service provider, we end up having to fill out a lot of third-party, risk documentation, and a lot of the questions are around what certifications do you have. So it's an indicator of, have you done this? Almost like, are you this tall to ride this ride, so to speak? It gives an indicator of I guess, some level
maturity?
Of assurance. Maturity, or even assurance that something has been done, or at least they've spent the money to go through this process.
Yeah, you have the people necessary to go through this very onerous process. So you're not some fly-by-night shop, right? You can't be and get through a SOC 2. Unless you sign up with one of these great vendors that automates the whole process for you, which is now a thing. And they don't really. I'm sure they make it somewhat easier, but they don't automate the whole process. All right, so Cyberinsurance actually shows up a couple more times in here. It's not supposed to be the same item twice there. I don't know why I've got the 8 and 9 should not be the same thing. Thought there was another one here. But yeah, so this is just a ridiculous example of a denial. Apparently somebody's cyber insurance policy was denied because there was no physical damage to the systems, which, yeah, of course there's not going to be physical damage, if
unless you have bad.
Unless you have bad. Yeah.
I can't believe that this has to go to a higher court, right? Like, that's, unless it was in the very, very, very small print and somebody's legal team seriously screwed up. How could that even be a thing?
I'm thinking somebody really screwed up and should have never agreed to this policy language.
Fun fact, lawyers can be your friend. I just don't, after reading
like
this,
anything else, lawyers are dual use.
Ever been signed off on.
Yeah.
My guess is a lot of time the lawyers are focused on. Yeah, my guess is a lot of time the lawyers are focused on contracts and not necessarily policies, like insurance policies.
Pretty big deal. I mean, you get a cyber insurance policy, you want to know that any kind of insurance policy, right? You want to know that it's going to pay out when you need it to. So, yeah, I mean,
or at least it says
gloss over that at your own risk. Sorry, what was that, Katie?
Or at least says the things you needed to say. I mean, it's, different analogy, but remember years ago that whole chocolate for passwords that somebody tried to run? Yeah. This is exactly that. Like, why aren't you asking the right questions? Are you just giving somebody chocolate to say, hey, buy my insurance policy, and then nobody's bothering to ask any questions? How could that, in the digital realm? No, there's not going to be any physical damage, right? You have to prove damages in a court of law in a lawsuit, but damages is pretty widely defined. And if somebody's signing off on a policy that takes damage and narrows it down to one thing that's not even really applicable, I mean, okay, if you have a server room, somebody could go in with an actual bat and break things, or, they could go in and unplug stuff, but I don't know what, 95% of the time, the damage is not going to be physical. So somebody didn't read the policy, and that's a huge miss on their part.
Yeah. I like chocolate, and I like watermelon. So I will make up passwords for chocolate and or watermelon.
Together?
No, separate. I don't like chocolate and mint. Those Andes mints I never got. I don't want chocolate and mint in the same thing. Mints are good, chocolate's good, not together. Peanut butter's good, chocolate is good. You can do chocolate and peanut butter, but like mint and chocolate I never got.
Every day I learn something new.
I would not blend or mix watermelon with chocolate, though.
Apparently that's like a big thing. I know a lot of people who feel very strongly about chocolate and mint, and Just give it to me.
Yeah, like mint chocolate chip ice cream. No.
Really?
I know a ton of people who think chocolate and mint together is criminal.
Yeah,
really?
I'm there. I don't like it.
I bet Tyler's one of them.
Oh well, Tyler.
He's a monster.
He didn't like chocolate.
Oh no, actually, if he's on my side, then I agree with him.
No, he doesn't like chocolate. Period.
Okay.
He doesn't like chocolate at all.
That's weird.
And he's not here, so we have to talk shit about it.
Exactly.
But we'd say it in front of his face, so it's totally legit. So.
Yeah. So there's certain people where I feel like every time they write something, it ends up in the news. And one of them is Kelly Shortridge. So we've got a piece from her leading cybersecurity with a control versus resilience strategy, and it's got a great infographic that goes along with it. And that is story number 6. And then the other one, the other essay, like if you only read 2 things this week, number 6 and number 7. Number 7 from Ross Hollyluk, who we've had on the show, 12 things that kill cybersecurity startups. And it's really spot on. 12 easy ways to fail a cybersecurity startup. So basically just talking about, he says he sees the same mistakes founders make over and over and over again. And it's a long read. It goes into good detail for any founders out there, anybody, but even if you already have a startup and you're trying to scale like seed level, Series A, it's a good read.
I see it is long. But there's a lot of really good points in here. One of the things I love is he says, trying to be yet another single pane of glass, and most security products want to be a single pane of glass, but instead they become a single glass of pain.
Single glass of pain. I like that.
Yeah, that's a good article.
That's a good turn of phrase. Yeah, I like that. But yeah, it's I mean, product market fit shows up a lot here, talking about understanding the customer versus understanding the investor. Because if you're going to be, and that's a big difference you see between bootstrap companies and venture funded companies, is the venture funded companies sometimes make the mistake of optimizing to impress the investors, which is why these press releases we read are just awful to us, or from a buyer perspective are pretty awful. Versus, if you're bootstrapped, there's only the customer. Like that's the only source for money. So that's you're going to optimize for the customer. You're not going to make that mistake. So a lot of really good advice in here. Really good insights. Another one I found interesting that's not really cybersecurity related, number 10, is Kickstarter's AI policy. So they just introduced an AI policy. It doesn't go into effect until August 29th, until the end of the month. But I found it interesting because it spends some time, and it's careful to say that this is kind of like a living document, like they reserve the right to change it going forward if they decide it's not the right thing. But they spend some time trying to define, like, and a lot of it's transparency. A lot of it's like, hey, if you're using AI, you're obligated, just like the SEC wants people to understand the risks before they buy stock. And that's why SEC filings are required. Kickstarter, very much like no guarantees. You're investing in a project. You're not paying for a product. They try to be very clear about that. And part of that is, it's a very different case if somebody's going to be creating art by hand versus if they're using DALL-E or Midjourney to make it, right? It's understanding the difference there is very important to people who are going to be investing in some of these projects. So it's just something you have to, when you're creating your project, you're going to have some checkboxes. Are you using AI? How much are you using AI? Describe how you're using it in your project. So it'll be interesting to see if this spreads to the rest of the consumer and enterprise world, if you're expected to see some kind of transparency notice on how you're using AI within the product. And even more importantly, like the AI you're using, where'd the data behind it come from? What kind of biases are in that? Is this going to open me up to copyright claims just because I'm using your product? Or am I going to end up with somebody else's patented copyrighted work sitting on my systems or coming out of, our own development? So kind of a footnote on our way to, as AI gets integrated into everything. But an important footnote, I think.
Well, according to Terminator, Skynet went active a year and a week ago. So there's that. Or, I'm sorry, 19 years and a week ago.
How long until the nukes fell, though?
That's a good question.
Between when it went active and that happened. Yeah, let's move on. Let's see. Good piece from Tanya Janka on the difference between product security and application security. Interesting topic. Like if you're not familiar with product, she quotes me in it. I just now noticed that. When did I say that? Okay, I wasn't expecting that. I'm famous.
Tanya is great, even when she doesn't quote Adrian.
Yes, she is. I was not expecting that. That is not why I included that. I just scrolled down and saw my name there. AppSec is a sub-branch of InfoSec, is what I said. Product security is a sub-branch of product. Okay. I agree with my own statement. But it's interesting, too, because you can't link to Twitter anymore, right? So that's kind of interesting here. I've noticed a lot of articles that have linked to people's tweets now have blank spots where the tweets used to be because they don't allow the direct linking anymore using the API.
I didn't know that.
So when you write blog posts and you want to use somebody's tweets, you're going to need like a screenshot or just copy the data or something like that.
Wow.
But yeah, product security is just all about ensuring that you build in, rather than, or you could be bolting on security, but it's just making sure the product is secure, and that might or might not involve application security work. It depends on what kind of product it is. Probably going to involve some AppSec. Yet another framework about how to use large language models securely. A lot of good detail in that one. That is story number 13.
There's so much coming out about that right now that I fear that everybody's going to fall into the trap of information overload and just like, this says this and this says that, and everybody has an opinion on it, which is perfectly fine. But I think at some point it's going to become too overwhelming.
What's fascinating is there's like dozens of references here, and none of those references existed 6 months ago. Like all this is so new. So like this is a post that's building on top of other posts, that have only existed for a couple months. Like there's references to Lakera in here, their Gandalf tool, which we've talked about in the past. Daniel Miesler, who we had on, we did an AI special a little ways back. And then what was the other big one? Yeah, the OWASP. There's now a large language model OWASP top 10 project, currently at version 0.5, and he references that as well.
What's really cool is you can use these LLMs to ask questions and come up with a really good new framework.
Yeah. Have the large language model create the large language model framework.
Right. Now we have all of this advice. Yeah, we have all this advice. You can just use LLM to build your new framework.
Yeah.
Except for those that don't look at recent articles or are aware of the recent information.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. Like that's one of the things you still have to remember is a lot of these that are based on, like, some of these large language models are based on data before any of this stuff was released to the public. So like they barely even, they don't know how people have reacted to them, which seems kind of odd.
How you keep them from being self-aware, Adrian. You've got to keep the AI from becoming sentient and self-aware.
You got to use,
because we're all going to lose our jobs to robots, right? I mean, that's, yeah, there's like that famous story about, I think it was Amazon, and they came up with some machine learning model to do their hiring, but the data they had was so old that all they were getting was like 20-something white males in their hiring or being selected for interviews, because that was what the company had hired like 20 years before and for so many years. So it was actually discriminating against diverse candidates because the data wasn't current. So, yeah, it's problematic.
All right, I think the only other thing we have left here before we get to the cocaine sharks is my buddy Javad put out video on Barbie being used for scams. Barbie is just all over social media, so of course, whatever the biggest trend is, yeah, absolutely. Like, scams are going to use that. If it's an earthquake, if it's a hot movie, whatever, like they're gonna use it against you. But yeah, always good to see him putting out videos. He's got some great videos.
Poor Barbie.
I know
she's trying to do good for the world.
You know Javad, right? Right, Katie? I don't know if you know Javad, Sean.
No.
Yeah, you worked with him for a long time.
Yeah, at 451. Well, a long time. It was like a year and a half.
Wow.
It seemed like a long time.
Well, okay, a long time ago.
Yeah, a long time ago. All right. So, marine biologists believe sharks are eating cocaine dumped off Florida's coast.
Love the graphic.
Who is wasting all this cocaine, first of all?
Well, when you are trying to illegally import cocaine from a transshipment location and you're flying over or driving through the channel between the southern hemisphere and North America, aka the U.S., sometimes you have a Coast Guard helicopter or a boat that shows up and you got to dump something. It happens, and then the sharks are just ready for it. And sometimes you have a sharknado happening when you dump it, and then you end up with a cocaine sharknado.
Are you guys seeing this overlay right now? This special overlay they made just for today? If you're listening to this podcast, pop it up on YouTube. Just watch the last 5 minutes. Our production crews really pulled out all the stops and made a custom one for today's squirrel story.
Here's a really important thing, okay? Because my first thought was, wow, it's not going through the shark's nose. So I had to Google, do sharks have noses? So here is from the Department of Land and Natural Resources.
You don't have
sharks are sometimes. What?
You don't have to consume cocaine through the nose for it to have an effect.
I don't know.
Okay, so do sharks have nose? I'm at suspense here.
Either, but I'm pretty sure if you eat cocaine, like you're still gonna ingest it.
Now you learned something about me. I have never done cocaine.
Yeah.
But this is really interesting. I think it's interesting. Sean will like.
Katie, I already knew that.
Yeah, I know. Everybody knows that. I drink tea during our podcast.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Sean's going to appreciate this little tidbit, though. Adrian might not, but I know Sean will.
I will appreciate it.
Sharks are sometimes called swimming noses because of their remarkable sense of smell. Two nares, or nostrils, are located under the snout, but do not connect with the throat. As sharks swim, water flows in one side of the nostril, through a nasal sac, and out the other side.
So now we need a marine biologist to identify whether or not a shark can just swim through and smell it through its nasal cavity and get high through the cocaine, or do they actually need to ingest it? And like the cocaine bear, how many kilograms are they actually ingesting of cocaine to really like get enraged and then go attack campers or whatever they do in the water?
Campers? There are no campers in the water.
Cocaine bear was attacking campers. And
I know, but this is cocaine shark.
I know.
He's attacking surfboards.
Which have their RV boat on the water, you see.
All right, you're off the scriptwriter team for the movie, Sean.
No, I'm on it because you need someone that's going to bring the ridiculous up, that's going to meet the requirements of what the audience wants.
Good argument. Good. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
So keep me at the table. I'll throw out all the ideas, and we can make this a thing. And then we can do a collabo with the Sharknado.
There's going to be a whole series of
on strike.
Yeah, we'll write it ourselves. Hollywood writers are on strike. You're right, Katie.
Here you go. Job opening.
You're gonna cross the line. You guys are gonna. But yeah, there's. I already saw there was another. I forget what animal it was, but there was another cocaine something already announced. So yeah, I'm sure we're gonna have a whole series of just like
naturally,
Sharknado.
You have the first cocaine shark movie. The first cocaine shark movie is just one, and then when you have the sequel, you have multiple, kind of like Anaconda to Anacondas. It just flows. It just works.
There was a sequel to Anaconda, the J-Lo movie?
Oh, there were several. Several. Oh, yes.
All right. Anything else y'all want to talk about before we shut things down here?
And the Anaconda movies were great documentaries on the living and continual habitat and habits of the anaconda.
Oh boy.
I have made Katie speechless. So back to you, Adrian.
Wasn't John Voight like the evil snake hunter or something in that? Mm-hmm. Who baited them to come
with an outrageous accent.
Oh, that sounds awful. What is this? This is the Anaconda?
Anaconda, yeah, the first one.
Oh, is that just the name of it? Anaconda?
Yeah.
I missed that one.
My favorite part was when the snake went up through a silo and then jumped down and ate the guy. I don't even remember who the guy was.
They
it was
do,
like iced tea or something. Or
what's cool is I think in the second one, Anacondas, there's an overhead shot of where you see multiple snakes going through the water and it's kind of moving grass or weeds. There's a similar shot in Jurassic Park 3, I believe it is, where the raptors are advancing on the group that is trying to get away from them, and you see from above as they're moving through the grass. That's a really cool shot, and I forget which came first. I think it might have been Jurassic Park, but really cool, like interesting shot from a cinematography perspective, showing the danger approach them is very, very cool.
Is it cinematography when they're creating it graphically?
Sure.
No, that just refers to how you set up the camera. You know what the shot looks like. So like, it's the process of putting together the whole shot.
Okay, so it doesn't refer to cameras actually, because there weren't any snakes there. Like that didn't,
Well, they put them in later, but
they didn't have
still have to film the live stuff.
Yeah, you still have, even with entirely CG scenes, you still have the concept of cinematography, even though there's no physical camera involved. But yeah, so I have a task for you, Sean. When you go see the Meg tomorrow, you need to report back and let us know
about the Megalodon.
You need to let us know if cocaine is involved, if there's any cocaine
absolutely.
Meg.
I will take copious notes. But I will not be able to update you next week because I will be at Hacker Summer Camp, Black Hat and DEF CON in Vegas. Right. But I will be back on the 10th, so I will have to remember my notes from tomorrow night when I go and see the Meg 2 featuring Jason Statham on opening night. I might even wear my shark outfit.
All right, sounds good. You have a shark outfit?
Oh my God.
You're going to ask me about
Wait,
that.
you haven't worn your shark outfit to this podcast yet?
I have a hat.
What are you waiting for?
Okay. All right.
All right. I'm wrapping this up. Thanks so much,
Please
Katie
do.
and Sean, for joining me today. Appreciated all the... we're always learning things on this podcast. John Voight and Anacondas and cocaine sharks.
And that's
And
right.
sharks don't have noses that connect to their throat. They don't have ENT doctors.
That's where Katie went with that. They don't have ENT doctors.
Wow. All right. So next couple of weeks are going to be, the format's going to be a bit mixed up. We're going to have some Black Hat content coming in. So just like after RSA, we're going to have some interviews from Black Hat that we do there at Black Hat. And so just expect that in the coming weeks. We're going to have a bunch of great interviews from there. All right. See you then.